The Roman Catholic Church teaches very clearly that marriage is a good thing. In fact, they actually went so far as to make it a sacrament. But they put this holy orders stuff well above it. And when they go for the people that they canonize and beatify as saints, they go to holy orders. They don't go to those laypersons that are actually fulfilling the duty of Genesis to be fruitful and multiply. And just to provide a little bit of further perspective, since people might accuse me of simply quote mining from the Bible, let's go to a separate book here. Let's say we go to Hebrews chapter 13, verse 4. Marriage is honorable in all, and the bed undefiled, but whoremongers and adulterers God will judge. Sounds like marriage is a pretty good thing. Now, for my personal favorite, 1 Timothy chapter 4, verses 1 and 3. Now the Spirit speaketh expressly, that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of evil. Verse 3. Forbidding to marry, and commanding to abstain from meats, which God hath created to be received with thanksgiving of them which believe and know the truth. Now, in addition to forbidding marriage to members of the clergy, anybody who's spent an entire Advent year in communion with the Roman Catholic Church knows full well about the prohibition from consuming meat on Fridays during Lent. I think I can kind of hang my hat on that one there. But since the overall purpose of this is economics, let me move on now to the monastical vow of poverty. Those in the atheist community do get a few things right occasionally, and one of the things that they get right is the rampant corruption in the banking system at the Vatican and the banking practices of holy orders. Think about this for a second. Anybody who's read any history regarding the monastic orders of the medieval church, and even up to this day, will know that these holy orders are swimming in money. Mother Teresa, vow of poverty. Does anybody have any idea how much money was at her disposal to do with whatever she saw fit to do with? I'm not sure. I will try to find a link to put in the description to give a rough ballpark. But I'll tell you right now, it's a heck of a lot more money than you or I will probably see in our lifetimes. The actual vow that holy orders take with regard to ownership is not real poverty. These people don't go without food except for when they voluntarily fast. These people don't live in rags, sleeping in doorways or in trash cans or in cardboard boxes on the street. These people sleep in relative comfort, in lodges and in abbeys owned by the monasteries. They're guaranteed food, they're guaranteed sustenance. They're not living in real poverty. They might be living a more outwardly humble life than some of the lavish people that lap up the bling-bling culture here in America, but they're not living in poverty. What the holy orders are actually living in is professed poverty, which means that they profess that they don't own the things that they use. I don't think I really need to go too far into the concept of how absurd it is to say that you don't own what you're eating for dinner. You're working, you're doing something that specifically pertains to a particular task and a particular organization, and that organization, as a result, is providing you with food and sustenance, lodging, and clothing. The entire delusion of collectively owned property, socialism, and communism is tied in very directly with this notion of professed poverty being a virtue. Something which I find utterly ridiculous. When people state that it is good to be poor, I laugh at them. And when they lecture me that the Bible says that it's good to be poor, au contraire. Let's look at a couple verses here and see what the attitude of the Bible is with regards to professed poverty. Let's go to Ephesians chapter 4, verse 28. Let him that stole steal no more, but rather let him labor, working with his hands the thing which is good, that he may have to give to him that needeth. This verse basically lays out the entire structure upon which ownership and charity is based. You cannot gain anything without some method of labor, preferably productive labor because it yields the best results. Now answer this question. How is it that charity, acts of giving alms, can exist without somebody committing some form of productive labor? What can establishments which command professed poverty do to help this basic equation and to make charity more charitable? The answer is absolutely nothing. The only thing that they can do is turn the practice into a bureaucratic nightmare, which is what happens. This is the reason why charitable donations have such a hard time getting to where they need to go, because we're wrapped up in this worship of institutions over people, rather than the other way around. Institutions don't exist without people, therefore it should necessarily follow that it is the workings of people that should take precedence over the will of institutions. But anyway, let's take this a little bit further, since once again I'm probably going to be accused of simply mining one quote for my personal convenience. Let's go to the Old Testament, Deuteronomy chapter 15, verse 7. If there be among you a poor man of one of thy brethren within any of thy gates in thy land which is the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not harden thine heart, nor shut thine hand from thy poor brother. So, we're given a very clear command right here, that we should not harden our hearts and we should give to the poor. We should not allow people to live in squalor. Let me ask you this. If it is not good to allow people to live in squalor, to live in poverty, then what business do we have going around professing to be in poverty? Shouldn't we aspire to do something productive so that we have the means to offer alms to those who have come to a state of poverty, to help them along so that they can get back on their feet? But anyway, once again, more quotes are likely needed in order to make my case, so I will go to the book of Proverbs, the most anti-communistic book in the entire Bible. Proverbs chapter 30, verses 8 and 9. Remove far from me vanity and lies. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with food convenient for me, lest I be full and deny thee and say, Who is the Lord? Or lest I be poor and steal and take the name of my God in vain. What we have here is a very, very clear condemnation of any desire for either poverty or excessive riches. What we're specifically laid out here with is the building blocks of the concept of the middle class, the people that actually move the ball forward, the people that make things happen, the thing it makes possible. Yes, even the excesses of the rich and the destitution of the poor, both of which can be fixed simply by adhering to the principles that a man ought not be so cavalier with his wealth that he starts throwing it after poor causes. You know, a lot of people out there say that greed is good. You know something? I will agree in the sense that greed motivated towards productiveness, which in turn may yield charity. If that's how you're defining greed, that's not something that I would condemn. However, greed in its actual original definition is an irrational love of money that specifically leads people to do unlawful and questionable things in order to obtain it, and often leads to people disposing of their wealth in illicit means. The excesses of the wealthy people that control the government of America are a prime example of this. What are we doing with the wealth that this government has amassed onto itself? Blowing up things and killing people. That is an example of true greed. And then also on the other side, the poor. Our government has made an absolute virtue out of being poor. We love the poor to the point that we create poor people so that we can hook them on welfare and make sure they vote for the right politicians, many of them Roman Catholics. Anyhow, in the interest of further proving my point, I am going to go further into the Bible to provide yet more proof of my viewpoint. Genesis chapter 3 verse 19. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, till thou return unto the ground, for out of it was thou taken. For dust thou art, and unto dust thou shalt return. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread. In other words, we will eat because we work. No work, no food. If everybody's sitting around, nobody's eating. Yet another verse. Let's go to the epistles now. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 11. And that ye study to be quiet, and to do your own business, and to work with your own hands, as we commanded you. The first part of this particular verse here, and that ye study to be quiet, and that ye do your own business. What does this say for all of the busybodies out there going around telling everybody, you must give me money so that I can help the poor? The proper response to that, obviously, is, well, what's stopping me from helping the poor? Point these people out to me and I'll take my money to them myself. I don't have to worry about whether or not you're trustworthy. I don't even know you. That is the confession of every taxpayer right there. Nobody, not even the people in the districts that elect these congressmen, really know their congressmen very well. How can you know that these people are actually trustworthy to actually send the money where it supposedly needs to go? So what's the point I'm getting at here? The Roman view of charity is tied up in bureaucratic institutions. The Catholic Church, particularly the post-Trent Roman Catholic Church, is the archetype around which every secular tyranny currently derives influence in some form or another. In Mein Kampf, Adolf Hitler was throwing praise left and right at the Roman Church for its system of bureaucracy and how it was able to subvert and subsume so many. Vladimir Lenin expressed similar admiration, though not as bluntly and not as often. Probably because he had Russian Orthodox people to contend with who were probably not as hospitable to Rome's version of Christianity. So the point I'm trying to make here is simple. The problem with the post-Trent Church is that in terms of its understanding of social justice, it is completely at odds with the American view of civil society. A society where you actually follow the principle of you keep what you earn, and it is you that decides best how to deal out the loving hand of charity. And that will conclude this particular talk for this particular time. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. God be with you all.